We're live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's Voice to the World. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Delcy Rodriguez sworn in as Venezuela's interim president as Nicolas Maduro pleads not guilty in U.S. court. Venezuelan parliament demands his release. Greenland dismisses U.S. takeover fears as Prime Minister Nielsen reassures citizens. Denmark warns any move to take Greenland by force would destroy 80 years of transatlantic security ties. Iranian leaders say the nation will offer no leniency to rioters but accept citizens' rights to demonstrate as the protests show no signs of waning off. India's Minister of External Affairs, Dr. Jaishankar, on a visit to Luxembourg to meet the Deputy Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, senior leaders and members of the Indian community in Luxembourg. And a Hindu businessman shot dead in Bangladesh. Concerns persist on security of minority community in the nation as a Hindu woman is gang raped, tied to a tree and brutally tortured. And on to the details now. Venezuela's Vice President and Oil Minister Delcy Rodriguez was formally sworn in on Monday as the country's interim president, 2 days after U.S. forces captured her predecessor, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife, Celia Flores, to face trial in New York. Now, Rodriguez took the oath in the National Assembly, telling lawmakers she did so in the name of all Venezuelans. Rodriguez, a 56-year-old labor lawyer, was sworn in by her brother George, who is the head of the National Assembly legislature. Also sworn in on Monday were 283 lawmakers elected last May. Just a small number of are classed as opposition. Most of the opposition boycotted the contest. The only lawmaker not in attendance was First Lady Celia Flores, who is in U.S. custody. The ambassadors of China, Russia and Iran, all close allies of Venezuela, were among the first foreign diplomats to congratulate Delcy Rodriguez after she was sworn in as the country's acting president. An ousted Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro appeared in the New York court for the first time and pleaded not guilty to all charges against him after U.S. captured them in a military operation. Now, Maduro, who called himself the President of Venezuela, said he is innocent and not guilty, while Maduro's wife, Celia Flores, also pleaded not guilty. Maduro has long denied the allegations, saying they were a mask for imperialist designs on Venezuela's rich oil reserves. Maduro lawyer Barry Pollack said he anticipated voluminous and complex litigation over what he called his client's military abduction. He also said Maduro was not requesting his release but may later. Maduro is facing charges of narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy and weapons charges. The judge ordered both to remain behind bars and set a new hearing date of March 17th. Well, the United States rejected accusations of aggression against Venezuela at an emergency United Nations Security Council meeting, saying the operation was a law enforcement action tied to long-standing criminal charges.
As Secretary Rubio has said, there is no war against Venezuela or its people. We are not occupying a country. This was a law enforcement operation in furtherance of lawful indictments that have existed for decades. The United States arrested a narco-trafficker who is now going to stand trial in the United States in accordance with the rule of law for the crimes he's committed against our people for 15 years. The United States will not waver in our actions to protect Americans from the scourge of narco-terrorism and seeks peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela.
While Venezuela's UN ambassador Samuel Moncada said international norms were at risk in the aftermath of the U.S. arrest and also urged the Security Council to demand that Washington releases Maduro and his wife.
Venezuela is a victim of these attacks as a result of its natural wealth. Oil, energy, strategic resources, and the geopolitical position of our country have historically been factors of greed and external pressure. When the use of force is used to control resources, impose governments, or redesign states, we are faced with a logic that refers to the worst practice of colonialism and neocolonialism. Accepting this logic implies opening the door to a profoundly unstable world where countries with greater military capabilities can decide by force the political and economic destiny of other states.
Well, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Monday called for respect of nations' political independence following the U.S. military operation in Venezuela. Guterres said in a statement delivered to the Council by UN Political Affairs Chief Rosemary DiCarlo that he was concerned that the U.S. operation to capture Maduro in Caracas early on Saturday did not respect the rules of international law.
The latest developments follow a period of heightened tensions beginning in mid-August, as discussed in this Council on 2 previous occasions. I have consistently stressed the imperative of full respect by all for international law, including the Charter of the United Nations, which provides the foundation for the maintenance of international peace and security. I remain deeply concerned that rules of international law have not been respected with regard to the 3 January military action. The Charter enshrines the prohibition of the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state.
Well, Greenland dismisses U.S. takeover fears as Prime Minister Nielsen reassures its citizens. Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen confirmed that Greenland is seeking to strengthen ties with the United States and its citizens should not fear an imminent American takeover following renewed interest in the Arctic island by U.S. President Donald Trump. European powers rallied behind Greenland on Monday after the U.S. military operation in which Venezuela's leader was seized, rekindling concerns that the island, an autonomous Danish territory, might face a similar scenario. Trump has said repeatedly he wants to take over Greenland and told the Atlantic magazine on Sunday that European allies backed Denmark and Greenland on the matter, emphasizing that the island's future lies in the hands of its people. And Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said on Monday that U.S. President Donald Trump must be taken seriously when he says he wants to acquire Greenland, and she reiterated that the Arctic island did not want to be part of the United States. Denmark said any move to take Greenland by force would destroy 80 years of transatlantic security ties. European powers also rallied behind Greenland after the U.S. military operation in which Venezuela's leader was seized rekindled concerns in Denmark that the island, an autonomous Danish territory, might face a similar scenario.
Firstly, I believe that the American president should be taken seriously when he says that he wants Greenland. But I also want to make it clear that if the United States chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops. That is, including our NATO and thus the security that has been provided since the end of the Second World War.
Well, Berlin's mayor said on Monday that German capital's core infrastructure needed better protection 2 days after an arson attack on a power station left tens of thousands of people without power. A blaze destroyed a cable duct over a canal, cutting power in around 45,000 households on Saturday. Electricity has since been restored for some 14,500 households, but full restoration is not expected until Thursday afternoon. Germany and other Western powers have also been on the alert for sabotage attacks on power, communication and transport systems at a time of increasing geopolitical uncertainty. The attack also disrupted mobile phone networks, halted train services, cut heating during freezing temperatures and forced hospitals to rely on backup generators. And Minnesota Governor Tim Walz will not seek a third term in office, he announced on Monday, saying he would instead focus on allegations of fraud in the state's welfare system. Walz became governor of the Midwestern state in 2019 and gained national prominence in 2024 as the running mate of the then Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democratic candidate who lost to Trump. In his announcement, Walz referred to the fraud allegations as a crisis and said he wanted to let others worry about the election while I focus on the work. Recently, the Trump administration has singled out Walz and Minnesota, including its large population of Somali Americans and Somali immigrants, over allegations of fraud dating back to 2020. At least 56 people have pleaded guilty since federal prosecutors brought charges in 2022 under Trump's Democratic predecessor, Joe Biden. And the U.S. took the unprecedented step on Monday of dropping the number of vaccines it recommends for every child, leaving other immunizations such as flu shots open to families to choose, but without clear guidance. The new list of recommended vaccines issued by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention includes polio and measles, but others such as hepatitis A and B and COVID vaccines are recommended based on risk and shared clinical decision-making between doctors and the parents. Officials said the overall to the federal vaccine schedule won't result in any families losing access or insurance coverage for vaccines, but medical experts slammed the move, saying it could lead to preventable hospitalization and deaths. Well, the overall is the latest sweeping policy change made under the Trump administration by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Last month, President Donald Trump urged the U.S. to align with other developed nations by reducing the number of shots for children. Kennedy has previously led efforts to drop universal recommendations for COVID-19 and hepatitis B shots for children, citing links to autism that scientists have repeatedly debunked. And Central African Republic President Faustin Archange Touadera has won a third term in office, securing an outright majority in the presidential election held on December 28th. Well, the provisional results from the Electoral Commission showed on Monday the 68-year-old Touadera, who took power a decade ago, was seeking a third term after a constitutional referendum in 2023 scrapped the presidential term limit. The results announced on Monday night by election officials showed Touadera received 76.15% of the vote, while former Prime Minister Anicet Georges Dologueil received 14.66% and former Prime Minister Henry Marie Dondra received 3.19%. Touadera's victory will likely further the interest of Russia, which has traded security assistance for access to resources including gold and diamonds. And Iranian leaders say the nation will offer no leniency to rioters but accept citizens' right to demonstrate as the protests persist for more than a week of sometimes deadly protest. The remarks came after U.S. President Donald Trump said Iran would face consequences if the authorities killed more demonstrators. Protests erupted on December 28th when shopkeepers in capital Tehran staged a strike over high prices and economic stagnation. They have since spread to other cities and expanded to include political demands. At least 12 people have been killed since December 30th in localized clashes, including members of the security forces, according to official announcements. In the latest developments, Iran had announced a monthly allowance for every citizen to alleviate economic pressure, equivalent to around 3.5% of the average monthly wage. However, despite the measure, there are still no signs of stabilization. And still to come in this edition of DD India Live. IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw says electronics production in India jumped 6 times and exports grow 8 times in the last 11 years. Two-time Olympic medalist PV Sindhu to return to competitive action for the first time since last September at the Malaysia Open Badminton Tournament.
This week on Defence Dynamics, India is reshaping its military structure with Bhaira formations. What are ramjet-powered artillery shells? And how India's rocket punch gets an emergency boost with Suryastra. As Europe and Israel turn to India for industrial depth, my take explains the why. Watch Defence Dynamics this Wednesday at 8 p.m. IST only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. And moving on, yet another atrocity against Hindus has come to light in Bangladesh. This time, a Hindu woman has alleged that she was gang raped, tied to a tree and brutally tortured in Kaliganj, Upazila of Jinaida district on Monday. Officer in charge, Jalal Hussain, said the incident took place on December 31st, but the complaint was filed later as the victim was undergoing treatment in hospital. The woman was rescued in a critically injured condition and admitted to hospital. One accused has been arrested and police are continuing the investigation. In another incident, a Hindu businessman who was also the acting editor of a newspaper was fatally shot in the head by unidentified assailants on Monday in Jessore district in southern Bangladesh. The shooting marks the latest in a spate of violent incidents against minorities in the country, especially the Hindu community members. An investigation was launched into the incident. Bangladesh has been witnessing widespread unrest since the death of Sharif Osman Hadi in December. Hadi, a prominent political activist and youth leader associated with Inqilab Mancha, a political platform that played a major role in the 2024 uprising that led to the ouster of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, was set to contest February polls in Bangladesh, where he was shot in broad daylight. Hadi later succumbed to his injuries at a hospital in Singapore. And External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is on France visit, met International Energy Agency Executive Director Faith Barol and discussed global energy issues, including oil markets and nuclear power. Barol appreciated his assessment of the global energy scenario and extended his support for India's growth and development. During his visit, the minister also interacted with participants of the French-India Yoga Talents program by Chamber of Commerce and Industry, France, India and Paris. He discussed the transformations underway in the world and the importance of India-France collaboration in that context. Well, External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar will also be visiting Luxembourg, where he will hold discussions with the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs, Xavier Bettel of the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, and with the senior leadership of Luxembourg. He will also be interacting with the members of the Indian community in Luxembourg. And Electronics and Information Technology Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw said that electronics production in the country has increased 6 times and exports have grown 8 times in the last 8 years. In a social media post, Vaishnaw said Apple shipped mobile phones worth $50 billion in 2025. He said this progress has propelled electronic products among the top 3 exported items. He also highlighted that 46 component manufacturing projects, including laptop, server and hearable manufacturers, are making electronics manufacturing a major driver of the manufacturing economy. Vaishnaw also said India will become a major player in the entire electronics stack, including design, manufacturing, operating systems applications, materials and equipment. And on to some sports news now. Two-time Olympic medalist PV Sindhu will return to competitive action for the first time since last September at the Malaysia Open Badminton Tournament. Sindhu will begin her campaign in Kuala Lumpur on Wednesday. The 30-year-old Indian batsman player has not featured on the BWF World Tour since her quarter-final loss at the China Masters last September. Sindhu subsequently withdrew from the remainder of the 2025 season to recover from a foot injury that hampered her and led to a series of early exits. Meanwhile, India's prospects in men's doubles will be led by two-time World Championship bronze medalist Chirag Shetty and Satvik Sairaj Renka Reddy, who will play their coaching and opening match on Wednesday. And Serbian great Novak Djokovic has withdrawn from next week's Adelaide International Tournament to focus on being ready for the Australian Open. The 24-time major champion who won the Adelaide International in 2023 had planned to use the event from 12th of January as a springboard for the opening Grand Slam tournament in Melbourne. The world number 4 has not played a tour match since early November last year. He made the semis at all 4 majors in 2025 but failed to go further, with his last Grand Slam title coming at the US Open in 2023. The 38-year-old will bid for his 11th Australian Open crown and record 25th Grand Slam title at Melbourne Park. The tournament runs from 18th of January to 1st of February. An 11-year-old racing prodigy, Atika Mir, has become the first Indian to secure a top 5 finish globally on debut during round 7 of the UAE karting championships in Abu Dhabi. She finished 5th in the male-dominated grid, where 35 drivers participated. The 11-year-old Indian has become the first female to register a top 5 finish in the history of the competition. She lost out on the podium by only 4/10 of the second. The championship is a premier professional kart racing series in the United Arab Emirates, featuring young talent competing across various age groups. An India under-19 team secured a commanding 8-wicket victory over South Africa via the DLS method in the second youth ODI in Belloni on Monday. The bowlers combined effectively to bowl the Proteas out for 245, with Krishan Kumar picking up a 4-wicket haul. Skipper Vaibhav Suryavanshi led the chase with a whirlwind 68 off 24 balls, racing to a 19-ball 50 in the process and smashing 8 sixes to give India early momentum. Lighting briefly interrupted the innings twice after his dismissal, but Abhigyan Kundu and Vedant Trivedi ensured India comfortably reached the revised target of 174 in 27 overs. And the second edition of Khelo India Beach Games kicked off with a glittering opening ceremony at Gogla Beach in Diu on Monday. The event will see the participation of over 2,100 athletes from across the country, which aims to promote sports and fitness among the young people. Around 25 states and 6 union territories will feature in the games, which will run from January 5th to 10th. DD India's Sushil Kumar brings this report from Diu.
The second edition of Khelo India Beach Games got off to a colourful start at the Gogla Beach in Diu in the presence of Lieutenant Governor of Jammu and Kashmir, Manoj Sinha, who was present as the chief guest. On the occasion, Prime Minister Narendra Modi conveyed his best wishes to the athletes through a special written message. In his message, the Prime Minister stated that India is witnessing a deep transformation of its sporting culture. Across the country, a renewed emphasis on institutional outreach, grassroots participation, and cultural change is reshaping how sporting talent is identified and supported. During the program, cultural performances by local artists captivated the audience. Speaking at the opening ceremony, LG Manoj Sinha praised the Khelo India scheme and extended his best wishes to all the athletes participating in the beach games.
सभी एथलीट से आज मैं कहना चाहूँगा कि विकसित भारत के निर्माण में आप सबकी भूमिका बड़ी महत्वपूर्ण रहने वाली है। स्पोर्ट्स जाति, धर्म और क्षेत्र से परे लोगों को एकजुट करता है और आज पूरे भारत की ताकत के प्रतीक के रूप में आप यहाँ एकत्रित हुए हैं। आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने पिछले 11 वर्षों में देश के स्पोर्ट्स इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को मॉडर्न बनाने के साथ साथ उसका व्यापक विस्तार भी किया है। आज बीच गेम से लेकर तीरंदाजी टूर्नामेंट में भारत अपना परचम लहरा रहा है।
More than 2,100 athletes from across the country have arrived in Diu to participate in the Khelo India Beach Games, which will conclude on January 10. In this edition, athletes will compete for medals in events such as beach soccer, beach volleyball, beach sepak takraw, beach kabaddi, penak silat, and open water swimming. Additionally, Malakhambh and tug of war have been included as demonstration sports in this edition of the Khelo India Beach Games. Sushil Kumar's report, Diu, DD India.
All right, that's all for this edition of DD India Live. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Khurana from Al Fasair in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.